What's up, cool people? My name is Matt, aka That Random Christian Gamer. Welcome to tonight's live stream. Kicking off things today with our Bible study continuation. We've been going through Nehemiah, and through that's where we are, kind of on our journey through the whole Bible. And we're at chapters 5 and 6 of Nehemiah. So that'll be roughly the first hour. And then after that, we got a little time to just chill and chat. And I haven't played some PowerWash Simulator in a while. I had it on the schedule last week in case there was some free time. Then didn't actually get to it, so I'm making up for last week by playing it this week. And I don't have anything else planned in between the Bible study and PowerWash Simulator this time. So I should be able to get to it and have plenty of time for it, or at least an hour-ish. Anyway, that's kind of what's going on tonight. This weekend, specifically Saturday, I'm going to visit some extended family. Different extended family than before. So I am going to be pretty... I will keep pretty closely to the planned schedule for my live streams tonight and tomorrow afternoon. So then I can get in a little more editing or video prep and that kind of stuff before then I take pretty much the majority of Saturday visiting family. Anyway, okay. I think that's all I've got before we get into this. I will go ahead and run the early Twitch ads. So I will see y'all folks on the other side of that. And then once that ad break is done, we will all, both Twitch and YouTube, get into some Bible study. Man. Okay. So I realized the first song I picked didn't exactly sound especially upbeat. I wasn't sure whether that was that song or a different one that was maybe a little bit more neutral anyway. And now it's playing this one that sounds like, an old Western kind of movie. And not even the exciting shootout part of it at that. Anyway. So hopefully after this week, I'll actually, kind of get a few consecutive weeks in where I'm like, doing the normal stuff throughout the week. And, it maybe then actually starting to get ahead on some of my video stuff. I feel like I've just barely been keeping up for quite a while. Anyway. Alright. Ad break should be done. So, yeah. Time for some Bible study. Here we go. Alright. We're looking at Nehemiah chapter 5. Events so far essentially involve, at least within the book of Nehemiah, events involve our title person hearing a report that things weren't great in Jerusalem for the exiles who had gone back. So he felt especially bad about what he heard regarding the state of Jerusalem's walls. So then he asks the king, by the way, they're pretty much the whole area is ruled by the Persian Empire at this point. So he asks the Persian king, can I go help with repairing the walls of my home? Or at least my people's home. And he gets permission, so he goes, and after looking at the damage, they start, fixing the wall. They get it built up to halfway. But right around that time, they're facing some threats from other people around them who never really liked the Israelites to begin with. So, yeah, that's kind of where things are at this point. Because of the threats from other people, now they're kind of on high alert as they continue building. They still continue building, but, everybody's got a sword strapped to their waist. Certain people are specifically designated to stand guard. Whereas before it was all hands on deck, focused on fixing the walls and the gates. But anyway, yeah. Now it's sort of all right, we're going to keep going, but we got to be prepared in case people attack. Anyway, all right. So now we will actually get into Nehemiah chapter 5 here. About this time, some of the men and their wives raised a cry of protest against their fellow Jews. They were saying, "We have such large families, we need more food to survive." Others said, "We have mortgaged our fields, vineyards, and homes to get food during the famine." And others said, "We have had to borrow money on our fields and vineyards to pay our taxes. We belong to the same family as those who are wealthy, and our children are just like theirs. Yet we must sell our children into slavery just to get enough money to live. We have already sold some of our daughters, and we are helpless to do anything about it, for our fields and vineyards are already mortgaged to others." So, first off, there's a famine going on, which makes things not great for a probably very agriculture-focused society. But on top of that, it seems like people are not, they're definitely not sharing their wealth, as verse 5 all but outright says here. And yeah, things are not good. Apparently the issues were, beyond just needing to build the wall. Although I don't know how long after they started trying to build it that this happened. At least not off the top of my head. So yeah, it's sort of a differentiation of classes here, which wasn't so much. Yes, there was room in the Jewish law for this kind of thing to happen, but it wasn't supposed to be so bad that, some people were really, really rich while others barely had enough to get by. There were supposed to be systems built in that would, aid the poor among them, and would also, keep the rich folks from, using their wealth to gain too much power over the others around them. But anyway, let's get to verse 6 here. "When I heard their complaints, I was very angry. After thinking it over, I spoke out against these nobles and officials. I told them, You are hurting your own relatives by charging interest when they borrow money. Then I called a public meeting to deal with the problem. At the meeting, I said to them, "We are doing all we can to redeem our Jewish relatives who have had to sell themselves to pagan foreigners, but you are selling them back into slavery again. How often must we redeem them?" And they had nothing to say in their defense. So, if I recall correctly, charging interest, especially to fellow Jews, was mentioned as a no-no in God's laws. Yes, they could allow people to borrow money, but the charging interest part was the problem, because it's like they were already in a tough enough situation to borrow money from you, and now you're going to make it worse on top of that. Of course, nowadays, this seems normal to a lot of people to charge interest on loans and such. These weren't necessarily just like voluntary loans, though, in a lot of these cases. Sort of like, I mean, student loans are debatably voluntary. Some might argue that they are less than voluntary. Like, there are a bunch of fields of study, a bunch of career fields out there that essentially require you have at least some sort of post-secondary education. If not, smaller subset requiring essentially at least a 4-year degree, and some smaller subsections and of those fields essentially requiring that you get a master's degree or a PhD or something. Like, my brother-in-law's a doctor, or at least studied to be a doctor. He went through 8 years of college level education, because he had to. That's like required for doctors, straight up. So he incurred a bunch of student loan debt because of that. It's not his fault that that's essentially a requirement. But anyway, so in any case, yeah. Back to the whole point that I was making there. The fact of charging interest on borrowed money within God's own people was not allowed, if I remember correctly. So they were breaking the law by doing this and making the lives of their fellow Jews that much worse. And the resentment between people was probably part of the reason why that was mentioned in the laws. They were supposed to be different from the other people around them. Part of that was not having such reasons to resent each other. So Nehemiah brings the better off folks together and says, "Stop doing this. You're making things worse for your fellow Jews." And on top of that, like, they've been making efforts to get the people free from servitude to foreigners, but it completely defeats the purpose if those freed people then have to be servants or even slaves of their own people. Anyway, all right. On to verse 9. Then I pressed further. What you are doing is not right. Should you not walk in the fear of our God in order to avoid being mocked by enemy nations? I myself, as well as my brothers and my workers, have been lending the people money in grain, but now let us stop this business of charging interest. You must restore their fields, vineyards, olive groves, and homes to them this very day, and repay the interest you charged when you lent them money, grain, new wine, and olive oil. They replied, We will give back everything and demand nothing more from the people. We will do as you say. Then I called the priests and made the nobles and officials swear to do what they had promised. Okay. So, yeah. These two sentences right here are pretty much related to what I was saying before about charging interest not being, or being against God's laws, essentially. And Nehemiah is pretty much saying to the people that it's against God's laws, or at least something God doesn't want them to do, when he hypothetically or rhetorically, I guess, says, should you not walk in the fear of our God? That was a way, essentially, of saying, God told you not to do this. Why are you doing it? So, then he mentions, giving things to people as they need it without charging them interest. He's like, yeah, okay. Lending other people money and grain and the things that they need is fine. Stop charging interest. Personally, I've never been the biggest fan of interest on things in general. Like, I don't necessarily mind that my money in a bank account earns interest for me, but it's pretty small compared to the interest you'd find on loans of various types. It's always, borrowing money that has a higher interest owed than, the, I'm not sure how to word it, but the reserving of money or whatever, like the interest you earn from saving your money. Again, interest, not necessarily other ways of making money off of your money, but interest is never as much when you're trying to get more as it is when you're borrowing money. You ever notice how that works? Anyway, we've made a culture and society where it practically functions off of debt, and we have money coming from essentially other money, so value is getting added to things for no real actual reason. So yeah, anyway, I'll stop there lest I get on a major ranting tangent about how I dislike various aspects of the modern culture and economy. Especially when it comes to money. Anyway, so Nehemiah has called these people out, and they're like, all right, we're going to give back everything, all the interests we charged, and any possessions of our fellow people that were taken as part of a payment or anything like that. So let's see how it goes from here, or what else happens as we continue in verse 13. I shook out the folds of my robe and said, "If you fail to keep your promise, may God shake you like this from your homes and from your property." The whole assembly responded, "Amen," and they praised the Lord. And the people did as they had promised. For the entire 12 years that I was governor of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd year of the reign of King Artaxerxes, neither I nor my officials drew on our official food allowance. The former governors, in contrast, had laid heavy burdens on the people, demanding a daily ration of food and wine, besides 40 pieces of silver. Even their assistants took advantage of the people. But because I feared God, I did not act this way. I also devoted myself to working on the wall and refused to acquire any land. And I required all my servants to spend time working on the wall. I asked for nothing, even though I regularly fed 150 Jewish officials at my table, besides all the visitors from other lands. The provisions I paid for each day included 1 ox, 6 choice sheep or goats, and a large number of poultry. And every 10 days we needed a large supply of all kinds of wine. Yet I refused to claim the governor's food allowance because the people already carried a heavy burden. Remember, O my God, all that I have done for these people, and bless me for it. So, this could sound a bit like Nehemiah sort of puffing himself up a little bit. I don't think that's the intent, but I could imagine people taking it that way. I really think it was just meant as a, all right, here's, the problem that was happening before and part of what caused it. And then by comparison, while I was leading the way, here's how I did things differently. And presumably, we haven't necessarily read that word for word outright in plain text, but presumably that helped things get better for a bunch of the people. So it does say that the people did as they promised, so, the interest, whether it was in, money or food or land or whatever, all that stuff was given back. And now I didn't necessarily know until reading verse 14 here that Nehemiah was considered to be governor of Judah. But, I mean, if he was really that much in charge, I guess it's not too surprising that he had a position like that. But yeah, the former governors, in contrast, had laid heavy burdens on the people. And yeah, so this stuff right here was probably a big part of why things got so tough for the common folk, at least, of Jerusalem and maybe even all of Judah. Why were the leaders demanding all these things from the people? I get that when they made offerings and stuff, there were certain portions of things that went to the priests, but that was because the priests didn't have their own land and stuff necessarily. Because they were supposed to be focused on, working in the temple. And I guess in a similar way, Nehemiah describes himself as being focused on, repairing the wall. Right here, verse 16. Devoted myself to working on the wall, and refused to acquire any land. And required all his servants to spend time working on the wall. Yeah. because that was his main focus. And I think really both of those examples, Nehemiah here with the wall and the priests and Levites with serving in the temple, I think both in a way go to show that if we're really focused on doing God's work first and foremost, we shouldn't really be, like, as long as we have enough to get by, we shouldn't really be that concerned with, like, getting super wealthy or, you know, having a bunch of nice things or anything like that. Because really, it's about helping other people more so than, you know, making things more comfortable for yourself whenever you're, you know, doing God's work. And so it like should just follow that you're more concerned about other people getting what they need than you are about, you know, making things comfortable or even luxurious for yourself. I'll admit there are times when I try or want at least to be more comfortable than I am, and you know, I have enough to get by. I really shouldn't necessarily worry too much about being more comfortable. But anyway, lest I continue further along a tangent regarding that, suffice it to say, yeah, don't be so concerned about making yourself wealthier than you need to be that you let things, and especially that you make things worse for other people. Anyway, we got a couple of notes to look at before I wrap this up. Did I see any? No, there were no prior notes. Okay. So, in verse 14, we got a note here about... okay, so this is talking about the years in question that Nehemiah said that he was governor. Said from the 20th year to the 32nd year of the reign of Artaxerxes, which would have been 445 to 433 BC. And now this thing at 40 pieces of silver, the Hebrew said 40 shekels, which would have been around a pound or 456 grams. That was the weight of the silver, and then, you know, the value of it was probably determined by the weight as well as, you know, other factors of how much that amount would have been able to buy you. But yeah, so that much was being demanded daily, along with a ration of food and wine. The governors, the former governors before Nehemiah, were demanding these things of the people of Judah. Now, if they were governors from other people groups and nations surrounding them, that wouldn't be too surprising. But it's not saying outright that that was the case or that it wasn't. But considering, you know, Nehemiah was able to talk to the people the way that he did, you know, the nobles and officials like that, I think it's safe to say that they were fellow Jews. Otherwise, I don't know if they would have been so okay with Nehemiah talking to them like that. Okay. I think that wraps up all my thoughts on Nehemiah chapter 5, so that will do it for this one. This one being this chapter for right now. We have another chapter to go. After I get myself a little bit of water here. And make sure my Xbox that I plan to use later doesn't, like, turn itself off. Just gotta do a little bit of something on the controller here to make sure it stays active. Anywho, okay, next chapter. Alright. So we're at Nehemiah chapter 6. The walls around Jerusalem have been halfway built at least. They're on high alert because of threats around them. Nehemiah, the person this book is named after, it's sort of from his perspective, A, but also B, he's sort of the leader of the effort to rebuild the wall. So yeah, they've built it at least halfway, maybe more by this point. And last chapter, he found out some other things that weren't going so well for the returned exiles. Namely, from a monetary standpoint, some of them were sort of, they were letting their fellow Jews borrow money and food and things like that, but they were charging interest on it. And so then the debts that had to be paid back were growing, and it was making things worse and worse for the people who had to borrow those things in the first place, which might have been initiated for some by a famine that was going on, or if it wasn't initiated by that, it was made even worse because a lot of the way that they provided for themselves was growing their own crops and then using it for themselves and or selling it if they had more than they needed. So, yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, last chapter was talking about that money trouble. So Nehemiah got the wealthier folks to stop charging interest on all that stuff, return whatever was taken as interest payments, and then, sort of took the lead in making sure that that didn't happen, at least while he was... I mean, it said he was the governor in the last chapter, so certainly under his leadership, that didn't happen again. So that brings us to chapter 6 here. So here we go. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gates. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at once at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But I realized they were plotting to harm me, so I replied by sending this message to them. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? 4 times they sent the same message, and each time I gave them the same reply. The 5th time, Sanballat's servant came with an open letter in his hand, and this is what it said. There's a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem tells me it is true, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and that is why you are building the wall. According to his reports, you plan to be their king. He also reports that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you, "Look, there is a king in Judah." You can be very sure that this report will get back to the king, so I suggest that you come and talk it over with me. Okay, pausing there. So, these were some of the people earlier who were mentioned as being sort of like enemies. Certainly people who didn't like this whole rebuilding idea. Real quick. Hi, Seth. Hope you're doing well. Just because you probably missed what I said earlier, this weekend, Saturday in particular, I'm going to visit some family, so I'm going to try and stick pretty darn close to the 2-hour each day stream schedule that I've got laid out, so hopefully I'll have time to get more video prep in before I don't have to, but before I take that trip. All right, back to the Bible stuff. Yeah, so these guys were now, rather than just simply threatening violence or whatever, they try to get to Nehemiah directly, since it's obvious that he's leading the charge with rebuilding the wall. Now, it does say here that they had finished the rebuilding. No gaps remained, although it says there weren't doors in the gates, which means, I guess, the structure of the gate was there, but it wasn't fully functional as a gate yet. Like, didn't really open and close like it should have. Anyway, so the enemies are essentially trying to lure Nehemiah out of the city, A, to get him to stop working, but also B, they seemingly are, planning to, well, maybe not kill him necessarily, but harm him probably to the point of not being able to continue what he's working on. But he recognized that and was like, this stuff I'm working on is too important. Why do I need to meet with you? So then a messenger comes and talks about this rumor that's going around. None of this is true, by the way. Nehemiah was not wanting to become king. In fact, he had even said to Artaxerxes that there was a certain time frame within which he planned to do the work. And then he would return. And the Jews were not planning to rebel. They were building the wall for their own protection, not to try and, build a fortress from which to then fight, rebel, and try and, take things back, take ownership, rulership, really, of the land. Like, that would have been kind of a fool's errand. At this point, their numbers are much less than what they had before they were exiled. So, yeah, trying to whip up a rebellion against the kingdom that had conquered not only them, but a bunch of the nations around them? Fool's errand. Not that it couldn't have happened if God really wanted it to, but nobody had heard from God that was what he wanted to do, so none of them had that intention. Anyway, but this messenger is like, hey, these rumors are going around that this is what y'all are planning to do. If you don't come out here and talk with me about what's going on, I have to assume that that's true, and it's going to make its way all the way to the king, and he's probably not going to like it, because What king likes rebellions? Okay. Got a couple of notes to look at before I move on. Verse 2 here, where it talks about meeting them at one of the villages, comes from the Greek version. Hebrew reads at Kepharim, which might have, probably was, one such village in the plain of Ono. But I'm not knowledgeable of the Hebrew and what Kepharim would potentially mean. So, yeah, that's the only difference there. The Hebrew actually names the place. Specifically, the Greek is like, yeah, it's a village in this area. Note here, as part of the letter, now instead of Geshem, Hebrew reads the Gashmu, which is considered a variant spelling. Yeah. Hebrew is a different language, especially ancient Hebrew, and yeah, especially if like the consonants are all the same. That's like, yeah, sure, that you kind of have to just take it as close enough, especially without being knowledgeable of the Hebrew and how that would possibly change the meaning of one's name. And for all I know, Gashmu was like one people group's way of saying his name, whereas Geshem was the way another nation or group of people would have said it. So anyway, this servant of Sanballat, after, you know, so he comes to Nehemiah, says all these things that are just a rumor, trying to get Nehemiah to come out of the city and talk to him. Then we get to verse 8. I replied, "There is no truth in any part of your story. You're making up the whole thing. They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with even greater determination. Later I went to visit Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, and grandson of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home. He said, 'Let us meet together inside the temple of God and bolt the doors shut. Your enemies are coming to kill you tonight.' But I replied, Should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter the temple to save his life? No, I won't do it." I realized that God had not spoken to him, but that he had uttered this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. They were hoping to intimidate me and make me sin. Then they would be able to accuse and discredit me. Remember, oh my God, all the evil things that Tobiah and Sanballat have done. And remember Noadiah, the prophet, and all the prophets like her who have tried to intimidate me. Alright. So, Nehemiah rightly tells the messenger, yeah, no, you're just lying. That's all made up. And then it gets into people like being paid as false prophets to try and mislead or intimidate Nehemiah and the others who were working. And I think this might actually be a much more detailed description of what was mentioned back in Ezra about Tobiah, Sanballat, and them trying to intimidate the people and, you know, hurling threats against them and eventually, like, writing letters to the Persian kings saying, hey, we think they're trying to rebel. You should look through the records and see that these people were known for, you know, rebelling against others around them who tried to rule over them, and basically accusing them as being troublemakers and trying to get the Persian kings to make them stop for fear of them actually causing a rebellion or starting one. So, my guess is, based on what Ezra said, that this story that was made up, that this messenger said to Nehemiah, was at least part of what was told to the Persian kings. It wasn't true, but that didn't stop the enemies of the Jews, essentially, from saying that to the kings. So, also kind of like it was mentioned in Ezra, it's like at first they tried to be a little bit more direct and say like, hey, come join us or let us join you. And in both cases, Ezra and Nehemiah see right through that and are like, nope, we're going to keep doing our thing. You go do yours away from us. Because you're not going to say it, but you're just trying to mess us up. So then when the direct approach doesn't work, they start like paying people off to like do their dirty work for them to try and convince people to stop or to otherwise sabotage their efforts. But yeah, Nehemiah sees through that. There was a note here at the end of verse 9 saying that comes from the Greek version. The Hebrew reads, "But now to strengthen my hands." So, rather than saying he continued the work with greater determination, I mean, I feel like that whole strengthening his hands thing was kind of just a more figurative way of saying that. So yeah, this one guy that he visits tries to tell him to go in the temple and lock the doors so that it'll be safe from enemy attacks. But he's like, no, that is bad. I'm not going to do that. I'm a leader, not a coward. So, yeah. He sees through the ruse and doesn't do what this guy, quote-unquote, prophesies. Okay. So, now I'll continue with verse 15. So, on October 2nd, the wall was finished, just 52 days after we had begun. Oh, dang. So the past few chapters were all in a very short time frame. Anyway, when our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. During those 52 days, many letters went back and forth between Tobiah and the nobles of Judah. For many in Judah had sworn allegiance to him because his father-in-law was Shechaniah, son of Erah, and his son Jehohanan was married to the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. They kept telling me about Tobiah's good deeds, and then they told him everything I said. And Tobiah kept sending threatening letters to intimidate me. Yeah, so even after the wall was finished, the threats still continued. And I guess because Tobiah in particular had connections with people of Judah, that's part of the reason why he was taken so seriously. And probably had some sway over the people more than just any random dude who, led a opposing nation. So, October 2nd. Hebrews says on the 25th day of the month of Elul of the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar. This day was October 2nd, 445 BC. Also see the note on chapter 1, verse 1. I almost want to go back and look at that now, actually. Give me a sec. Because, okay, so yeah, it's bringing us to this note where it's mentioned that these dates were cross-referenced, and that's how they aligned some of these things, mentioning the Hebrew lunar calendar with other more concrete dates. So, yeah, it was only 52 days from when they started repairing the wall to when it was done. I thought there was a possibility it took a whole lot longer than that. But no. So, a bunch of that time that Nehemiah in the previous chapter mentioned being governor of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd of King Artaxerxes, or 12 years, he was governor. Only the first, 2 months of that was building the wall. But there might have been more work to do, and, the people definitely still needed some leadership. I do wonder if Nehemiah had specified a 12-year time frame for all this. In which case, maybe getting the wall done that quickly was just sort of a unexpected blessing for Nehemiah. In any case. So yeah, wall is all done, but people around them are still trying to threaten or otherwise, complicate life for the Jews. And that is about it. I don't really have any other thoughts. So, yeah. That's all I got for Nehemiah chapter 6 then. Okay. So, planned Bible study portion of things is done. One of these weeks, maybe not this one, but one of these weeks, I might want to do a third chapter as we're in Nehemiah, just so that, basically because Nehemiah has an odd number of chapters. So then I can transition more smoothly to the next book of the Bible. Not that I need to do it that way, so if push comes to shove, I won't, but anyway. Not this week. I'm not going to do that this week because of wanting to, stay pretty well in line with my planned time frame for things. And I unintentionally denied people, PowerWash Simulator last week, even though I mentioned it was pretty likely to happen. So, yeah. Let me go ahead and transition things over to that. Meanwhile, Twitch folks, Y'all might get some ads. I'll see you on the flip side if that happens. Alrighty. Nope. Here we go. Okay. Stream topic on Twitch has been changed to PowerWash Simulator. And now I shall set myself up for the game. Boop. Yeah, I think I'm gonna ditch my background music here. Don't want that necessarily getting in the way of the game. Also, this is technically not E10 plus. This game is simply rated E. There we go. And because of the way that I've set things up, my chat, I realized, was kind of momentarily obscured by File Explorer stuff. Anyway. Speaking of which, did you hear that, like, Microsoft is... I think it's Microsoft is planning to, like, start integrating AI into the File Explorer? Like, why? What do you need AI for within your File Explorer? I don't get that. Alright. So here we are with some PowerWash Simulator. I technically have one other career job to do, or I could just keep working on other bonus jobs. I've got the Spanish Villa here. I've got the Modern Mansion. And also, without, paying for any DLC or anything, there's also one more Final Fantasy themed job. Well, maybe not just one more. At least one more. And a couple other seasonal things here. I might, just because it fits with the weather I've had around here lately, I might do this whole ice rink cleaning job. Because, it's been cold in this area. Also, doggone it, I'm like... scooched over there. Alright. I don't want to be so far in the corner of my webcam view. Alright. I don't think I had any progress on any other seasonal jobs. Santa's Workshop would have fit as well. Yeah, I figured I'm a little late for the Christmas boat, though. Plus, I did that co-op in a totally different context, but alrighty. So, how's everybody doing? Dirt Finder can't even begin to imagine the extent of moral decay present in our children. Make them behave this way. So what? This is all the kids doing, you're saying? Park warden person there? Have you seen what they've done to that poor polar bear? Not yet. I not even made it past these penguins right here. So, speaking of Santa and Christmas stuff, though, I'm curious if you feel like sharing. Are there any particular gifts or anything like that or even just like interesting things that happened over the recent holidays. That could include Christmas or any others like it, or even New Year's, anything interesting. For me, I would say probably one of the more interesting gifts that I received, at least, was a rechargeable air duster. So, essentially, like, instead of using cans of compressed air to try and, like, get the dust out of my electronics, I can use this thing that is rechargeable. And, you know, I shouldn't have to get any of for quite a while, or worry about things like, because I'm not sure how long compressed air will actually like remain usable and or safe. I would think there's at least a chance of, you know, that being a limited time thing. Although I don't know for sure. I can't say I've had enough dealings with the process of compressing air to know how that all holds together and how long and all that. Wonder if my one friend Tanner would know anything about that. I mean, he does glass blowing, but I do wonder if sometimes, you know, compressed air is involved potentially in what he does with all that. I really probably should, rather than doing inside and outside of these objects, maybe just focus on the exterior here first. If I really wanted to try to be efficient, I could just do, like, you know, one sweep around way down low. And then do another sweep higher up. And okay, I just remembered I have a gift that I'm going to be taking with me when I see my extended family on Saturday. I still need to, like, put some, you know, gift wrapping tissue paper stuff in the gift bag that I have that in. But otherwise, it's all set. Honestly, it's something I've had for quite a while and just never really got rid of. In fact, I think I initially got it as a gift in another, like, sort of gift exchange sort of situation. And then the following year, it wound up coming back to me in pretty much next year's edition of that same gift exchange. It's nothing like that bad. It's just like something that would probably mostly be used as decoration, and I guess people there didn't want to use that stuff as decorations. I don't know. I'm not gonna get it out and show what it is, just in case anybody in my family ends up watching this, live or otherwise. I am so inconsistent with my cleaning here. Yeah, so I said this earlier in the stream, but I don't know who all heard it. I'm very much hoping after this weekend that, I'll actually get a few solid weeks in a row of, like, not really having anything out of the ordinary going on. That will take, like, entire days away from what I normally try to do. So hopefully then I can actually, build up a bit of a video backlog or at least start building up a backlog. Because the way things have been lately, I've been, doing my streams and, like, basically editing that stuff pretty much right away. Starting to, at least. But then not necessarily getting the videos entirely prepped and ready for, like, that whole next week, which is okay because the stuff I'm recording generally isn't for, it isn't supposed to be released with my edited video schedule until, like, 2 weeks after it's recorded. Or at least there's a full week in between recording stuff and it going, public with the edit. So at least I'm not rushing it out so bad that it's like I barely get the very next video done in time. But still, I'd like to at some point have it where I might even have a couple of weeks backlogged. And not have to worry about, the stuff that I've recorded needing to get out there shortly after I maybe take some kind of a trip or something. Speaking of which, just to use up my vacation time that I've earned so far from my work, gonna take a bit of a trip on, it's like kind of mid-February. I want to say it's the week of the 18th at least. Yeah, that's pretty much solely to use up some of my vacation time. Well, I wasn't entirely sure, because this is my first year at this job. I wasn't entirely sure if it would be okay for me to say, like, hey, I've got this vacation. I want to use it for a day after my vacation would, like, either roll over or trying to think of the word. I guess either roll over or reset. And like, I wasn't sure if, going to them before the reset day, asking to use it on a day after the reset day would be okay, essentially. I see Parky's got you cleaning up the ice rink from Indy Clemson. I think he'd happily flush us all away, too, given the chance. Okay, who's us? Is that one of the kids that the park warden was talking about making the place dirty? Also, I'm still not sure that I've seen this polar bear that was mentioned. I could look around for it, but I'm gonna wait. Either until I've cleaned enough to get to it, or until just before I end the stream, because if I wait until some other time to try and see the polar bear, then I might forget that I need to, or that there was supposed to be anything significant about it. Oh yeah, random note, those of you who watched last week's stream, I did, in fact, get the Ezra summary video out there in time. Thanks to Seth for some help on that. It'll be a few weeks before I need to do something like that for Nehemiah, but once we wrap up that book of the Bible, then it'll only be like another week or so before I then make a similar kind of video for Nehemiah. Alright. I'm just trying to get this thing cleaned now. After that, I'll probably just continue along the same wall that I was working on. That's supposed to be like a Santa type figure on skis here. And again, this was a, winter themed job, so maybe. Okay, hang on a sec. Let me get some more water here. I've been talking on quite a bit. Throat is slightly sore. I should, well, if I'm gonna keep talking, I should do so a bit more quietly so I don't strain my voice as much. I do wonder if I end up talking significantly less, maybe I should put some background music on. I don't normally go with a bunch of background music. Although, hang on a sec. Does the game maybe have some sort of sound options that I have? Okay, well, I could definitely turn up the ambience volume. Oh, and there's music. Turn that up too. I'm not really hearing any particular music for this, though. That just me? Options. Yeah. Alright, fine. All the way up. You know what? All of it. All the way up. Just to see how different it might be. Stuff. I'm like, okay, this has got to be getting close here. And it was. There's a little bit more dirt down around here, though. So they're just calling this a bobble. I guess I would typically use the word ornament, but there are ornaments of other shapes, so I guess bauble is technically more accurate to the shape of what it is. There we go. Okay, exterior's done. Back to the wall. Not even entirely sure that I got a few of the things near the entrance fully cleaned, although maybe, I don't know. I tend to get so laser focused on the current thing that I'm cleaning that I sort of forget what all I've done up to that point. That one S that I just washed away some of, like... Is it just me, or was that, like, an early 2000s thing? Maybe even a late 90s to early 2000s thing. I don't know, I just... Or maybe it's not that. Exactly, and maybe it's just like a middle to high school thing. I feel like a lot of people in my high school class, maybe also middle school, made that specific S like that. Just kind of randomly. Some would use it practically as a way to, like, decorate their notebooks or other supplies that they had. Others, I think, would just do it from time to time simply because they liked to, doodle here and there. Huh. Okay, one reindeer is clean, but not the others. Shows you how slightly inconsistent I am, I guess. I'm like, okay, how is the backdrop still that dirty? Oh, am I supposed to get on top of it? Nope. I was like, can I rotate this object? Apparently not. Alright. You, my friend, are going out there. Oh yeah, definitely supposed to clean the top of the backdrop. Okay. So, I have noticed PowerWash Simulator 2 is a thing, but that's only available, at least Xbox version is only available either paid or with the Ultimate Xbox Live. Or, yeah, Game Pass. I don't know why I was blanking on that for a sec. It comes free with Game Pass Ultimate, otherwise you gotta pay for it. The first PowerWash Simulator I did not have to pay for. I never had Ultimate. In fact, I have never had more than, well, what used to be Xbox Live Gold, I guess. Now it's either they changed the name to be Game Pass Basic, or maybe they're still calling it Game Pass Core. I definitely remember seeing something about the name of it, but about plans to change the name of it anyway. Indy, Parky cleaned up the skate park before the televised state championship. There's no idea what that did to our rep. I mean, I can't blame the guy for wanting the place to look nice for a state championship. The Bucketon crew have been rinsing us ever since. I don't think he means literally rinsing. I don't think they literally mean rinsing there, as in, like, physically washing something with water. I'm gonna need to get back on the, back on this before I can jump onto the top of the arch there. Should have just cleaned the top of it while I was up here. And then gotten down. Okay. Square arch is clean. Yeah, I definitely did not fully clean some of those stone arches near the entrance. Whoops. I think I just got so focused on, like, the inner wall there and continued around. But then I got distracted by the bobble. Which, I mean... does that mean I have some cat-like tendencies? Being distracted by a bobble? I think maybe that's sort of a stereotypical... a cat stereotype is what I was trying to say. Cat cliche, if you will. I mean, it might be true in a lot of cases, but... I imagine maybe not always. Given the rate at which I am cleaning this, I think I'm gonna be most of the way done with this job by the time the stream ends. Although, if things go the way they tend to in this game, maybe not exactly, because, you know, the last few percentage points always seem to be the toughest ones to get. There we go, okay. Handrail there is done. Handrail there is done. And with that inner wall's done, so is that handrail, okay. Now I guess I'll clean some more of the round arches. Not sure exactly why one of them is square when all the others are round. But, hey, you know. I'm sure somebody had a vision and was like, yeah, let's mix it up a little bit. Not have all the arches be round. That's boring having them all be the same. Sort of like the idea of having an accent wall that, you know, like, you specifically paint one wall of a room a different color just to make it stand out. Like, I was actually An example of this, actually, when I was briefly a youth director at a church right near here, one of the things they had wanted to do for a while was actually to repaint the youth room. And I guess, you know, seeing the intent on growing the youth ministry, evidenced by hiring a youth director that they hadn't had for a while. Meaning they hadn't had a youth director for a while. And I was the one hired for that. Anyway. So, they painted the youth room, and 3 of the walls were like kind of a grayish color, and then they had 1 red accent wall. Like, I guess I'm kind of neutral on the whole accent wall idea. I guess see why some people might like it. I personally am just like, okay, it's there. Yeah, it definitely draws attention to that wall. But I'm not sure I'm overall gonna say most rooms would look any better with or without an accent wall. I'm also realizing so far I have absolutely not at all needed to use any of my other equipment. It's all been this... Well, first of all, it's been the same extension and nozzle combination on the power washing device. Also haven't used the stool or the ladder yet. And honestly, I kind of prefer it that way. I don't know why. I guess especially when there are so many other things in life that, including in my work, that all but demand using all the tools at your disposal to be as efficient as possible. This game's just here like, yeah, clean this stuff however you want. Occasionally you'll need to use something different, whether it be, you know, a lower degree nozzle to get more pressure, or, you know, the stool or ladder or something like that. Occasionally that is, like, absolutely required. But when it's not, I could just sort of sit here and be like, alright, I don't gotta think too hard about what I'm doing, I don't gotta, you know, like, try and optimize anything and worry about getting it done quicker just to get it done. I find it's more relaxing when I don't have those types of things that I'm thinking through while I'm doing this stuff. Okay. 53% complete. Given that I probably started this before the first full hour of the stream was done, yeah, I'm probably not quite going to complete this. Should be pretty close, though. Maybe if I end some of, tomorrow's recordings a little earlier, or, like, I just, through the series of events and finding a convenient stopping point, end up not going quite an hour for each bit of recording tomorrow. Or whenever I happen to have a little bit of extra time in a stream, maybe I could get back to this and, finish off this job. Hey, there we go. Alright. Any more? Oh, no. That base is clean. And that's separate from this base. Where's the dirt on this base? Oh, okay. Just a teeny little bit right in the corner there. Okay, sorry. Give me a couple seconds. I'm getting multiple phone notifications. I am just making sure that none of them are text messages or anything that I would want to respond to sooner rather than later. The answer is no. None of it's like that. I guess I really should clean the floor. But yeah, I mean, I guess as long as the floor's sectioned off. Otherwise, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go around the entire rink now, just cleaning the floor. But I was thinking mostly I'd just do like this sort of outer floor. Lindsay, the street artist. No, I don't know Gnomesy, but did this mural in Bucketon with Parky laughing. This is all down the drain. So humiliating. Okay. I mean, who does that? Yeah. Sounds like they're trying to, paint this park warden guy as your stereotypical, like, wants everybody to follow the rules, doesn't like the teenagers because they tend to want to break the rules and or make a mess. And I mean, I don't think anybody's looking to, PowerWash Simulator for any sort of, like, deep character development or story or anything like that. There is, maybe, at least in the campaign, sort of a broader story going on, but, like, hey, it's really easy to lose track of it with all the time you have to spend just cleaning things. But also, like, it's, I guess, it's definitely not so applicable to any of the bonus jobs or the DLC or anything like that. Although, I think some of the DLC have their own little mini stories worked into them. But also, doing it job by job can make it feel a little bit episodic and not so much like one continually advancing story. Like, it might kind of take some tangents here and there, and all sorts of things like that that I think only the people who are really trying to figure out what the story is in this game are actually gonna pay enough attention to figure that out. Although, if you want some thoughts on what it could be, there is a game theory video about it. Like, literally, meaning from the, like, game theorist YouTube channel and all that. Yeah, jeez. I'm gonna say it before, the ice rink isn't quite clean enough. Because somehow, even though it seemed to me like I was being pretty methodical, I've, okay. There we go. I'm like, I still left some little bits of dirt here and there, I guess. But once you get a high enough percentage of the thing cleaned, whatever that thing happens to be, then it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, close enough. Ding, it's done. I was like, okay, now that I'm getting closer to the interior of this, what did happen with the polar bear? Okay, looks like somebody graffitied a mustached, sunglassed smiley face on it. Not sure if they were the ones to put the gnomes on there. Also a snowman with cool guy shades on the other side. Also not related to the bear, but little gnome constellation there. Reindeer Lodge, Santa's Grotto. Ice cream party. The other two sounded like, places or buildings. Ice cream party isn't necessarily a building. That's more of an event. But hey, whatever. I'm getting paid to clean stuff in this game. I'm not getting paid to, make decisions on signage or, names of certain spots in the park or whatever. Alright, I'm at 78% now. Still, like, kind of a chance I might finish this before the stream's done. I think all the parts of the snowman are clean. As well as the candy cane and all 3 signs. Okay, moving on. Ah, the park warden. Finder just had a terrifying thought. Oh, really? What would that be? Polar bears and penguins don't coexist in the wild. Okay. Is that your terrifying thought, or is there more to it? In fact, they live on opposite ends of the earth. Uh-huh. Are we getting to where one of them, do you think the depiction of them interacting like this might impact our taking? I don't think most people are gonna care that much. Mr. Park Warden, sir. Or ma'am. I thought maybe the terrifying thought was going to get into, like, do you think penguins would end up being prey for polar bears or something along those lines? Since they don't interact in the wild, one might wonder what could happen if they did. Okay, stairs are done. Yippee. I thought for sure it said one of these presents still had some dirt on it. I guess it was just that one? Well, if I get real close to the end of this job, and then, look at the list and find there's a present, it's still dirty, then I'll know. But otherwise, I can proceed with cleaning other things. Out of curiosity, I wonder if there are any NFL football fans out there. If you are, let me know. I'm looking for... Well, I wouldn't mind discussing people's thoughts on some things, whether it be... I mean, currently, playoffs are going on. Wonder what teams people might be rooting for. I mean, obviously, there's only so many choices as things stand. But also, been a lot of coaching changes. I think there's, at least 8 different teams out of the 32 total in the NFL that are going to have a new head coach next year. I don't believe the star and the lights. Christmas tree lights, it says... Those are clean, and it says the star is clean. And if they're not, well, I'll be able to find out once I get close to the end and check the list. If I even need to check the list. Really, if I did a good enough job, there's a chance I just keep on rolling, and it gives me a really short list of 3 items remaining when I get close to the end. Or 3 types of items, at least. Alright, so the park warden mentioned, stuff about penguins and polar bears interacting, and I'm just like, I don't think they're really interacting with each other directly in this whole setup. Yeah, I mean, relatively, they're a lot closer. At least the figurines are a lot closer than real-life penguins and polar bears would be. So this is not supposed to be a Santa thing, it's just a skiing gnome. Okay, the hat is a separate thing. There we go. Yeah, I think I got everything up there. Yeah, wait, nope. Not quite. Base of this, there we go. Okay, now I think I got all of that. So I think pretty much all that's left is this stuff around the polar bear here. I've still got like 8 minutes before this hour of the stream is done. I might not have completely gotten the walls of that platform that, you know, the skiers were on. Park warden is really worried about the whole, you know, polar bear and penguin thing, but like a lot of people don't even see either animal actually in the wild. Most of the time they'll see them at a zoo or aquarium or something like that. So how many people do you think are really going to be that knowledgeable? Okay, so these are penguins on top of the polar bear. So yeah, that's definitely a more direct interaction. But, you know, even if some people know that that kind of thing wouldn't happen in the wild with penguins and polar bears interacting, maybe some people aren't looking for this kind of thing to be realistic. Some might even want it to be unrealistic. Just because then it feels more like an escape from reality. Yeah, I guess I gotta clean the top of the polar bear. That helps. Okay, what am I missing? What dirt have I missed on this here polar bear? There we go. Polar bear is cleaned. Onto this little bit of wall here. Oh, yeah, and then there's this. %, but I'm still not down to the short list. So either I'm going to have to do a little more looking around after this stuff. Or, okay. Entrance posts. Also, I missed the polar bear penguin. Oh, that one isn't quite. Of course, it would be the back. Ice rink backdrop reindeer. Oh, yeah. Right, there was only one of those that I actually got fully cleaned as I was doing the main part of the backdrop. Oh, that one's done. I thought that one needed more. Entrance posts. What? Entrance posts. Oh, these? And what do you know? Just in time for the end of the stream. Ta-da! Kind of looks even more organized the way that I did that when you see the, like, time lapse. Okay. Looking at it now, as it's clean, it does seem to be missing something. Would I appear weak in the eyes of the youth if I permitted them to add a flourish to the scene here and there? Polar bear looked so noble with that mustache. Anyway. Alright. So. That is all that I had planned. And that is all that I really intend to do tonight. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm not gonna try to rush the end of the stream before the next ad break would kick in, though. So, anyway. Friday. So, yeah, upcoming streams. Tomorrow, I will be doing some more Borderlands 4 stuff. Just progressing the story there. We're trying to track down Zane, who wants to get revenge on the Rippers for basically killing his pet. So that's, I guess, kind of the main story plot point that we'll be working through. So that's Friday. Next Thursday is going to be more Bible study and some other game. Not sure which one yet. So, yeah. we'll see how it all goes. You keep saying Hades 2. I only have Hades 1 there, Seth. I know Hades 2 is still kind of new, so it's on people's minds a bit more. But I'm only playing through Hades 1. Anyway, yeah, it'll probably be one of those two games, though. Hades 1 or Slay the Spire. Anyway, so yeah, that's the general gist for the next week. And ads may very well be rolling for Twitch folks. And then I guess not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, I'll be doing some more Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC data battle stuff. Fingers crossed I can actually get through a couple more battles in that. I've started to hit a bit of a difficulty wall on some of them. But, maybe some of the ones that I tried before I'll be able to get back to with a little more knowledge and actually, defeat some of them. I still also have not at all tried Larxine's battle. I think hers is the only one I haven't tried at all yet. Because there's 11 that are currently unlocked. I've beaten 5. But then there was also... I tried Vanitas, Terranort, Ansem. That still leaves 3 more, though. For just the initial 11. Oh, yeah, Syx. Make that 2 more. Larxine's one of them. Not sure which one I'm missing. Anyway, whatever. No big deal. All right. Where to for rating? Good question. I guess I could have started looking into that a bit earlier. Let's see here. I see plenty of options even just out of people I follow. I know we rated Jake Fedora last time, so probably won't rate him again this time around. I don't think Lux Digital is usually live while I'm wrapping up my streams. Live doing Eve. What is Eve exactly? Can't say I'm super familiar with that. I also apparently do not follow this particular streamer that you have mentioned, Seth. Let me try looking him up, maybe. Eve Online. Oh, wait. I don't know why. I'm trying to think. Eve Online is that one, like, kind of space game sort of thing, right? I know that sounds very general, but... And it looks like in the little preview that I'm seeing here, he just recently got raided by somebody else. I don't know. Does anybody else feel weird about the idea of knowingly hopping in with a raid right after somebody else raided? I mean, yeah, it does happen. Nothing wrong with it necessarily. You know what? Whatever. I'm willing to roll with it. Okay. Prepping the raid. Here we go. So, that's going to do it from me. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I will see y'all soon for another stream. Feel free to check out edited videos on YouTube in between streams. But whatever all ends up happening, until the next time I see you, stay cool, everybody.